Today's homily is for the third Sunday of Easter. In the Gospel today, we hear Jesus ask Peter 3 times if he loves him. Why 3 times? Let us recall that Peter denied knowing Jesus 3 times the night Jesus was arrested. 3 times Peter was asked if he knew Jesus, and 3 times Peter denied knowing him. At the Last Supper, just after the institution of the Eucharist, Jesus speaks directly to Simon Peter. "Simon, Simon, behold, Satan has demanded to sift you all like wheat, but I have prayed that your own faith may not fail. And once you have turned back, you must strengthen your brothers." He said to him, "Lord, I am prepared to go to prison and to die with you." But Jesus replied, "I tell you, Peter, before the cock crows this day, you will deny 3 times that you know me." What an interesting image, to be sifted like wheat. Jesus takes an image from the harvest of the wheat and the process of preparing it for the making of bread. The external worthless chaff needs to be separated from the grain of wheat. The farmer would throw the harvested wheat in the air until the wind would naturally blow away the useless chaff, and the heavier wheat grain would fall to the ground. Here Jesus is saying that Satan has demanded to see the depth of faith in Jesus that his disciples really have. Are they like grains of wheat or merely useless chaff that is worthless and only to be used to be thrown on a fire? In the Garden of Olives, before his arrest, Jesus invites his disciples to stay awake and to pray, but they fall asleep. Then after the arrest, Peter, who had boasted his willingness to die for Christ, denies him 3 times. Here we can see Peter is more like chaff than wheat. "You too are one of them." But Peter answered, "My friend, I am not." About an hour later, still another insisted, "Assuredly, this man was with him too, for he also is a Galilean." But Peter said, "My friend, I do not know what you are talking about." Just as he was saying this, the cock crowed, and the Lord turned and looked at Peter. And Peter remembered the word of the Lord, how he had said to him, "Before the cock crows today, you will deny me 3 times." He went out and began to weep bitterly. From Luke's gospel, we learn that Peter was not somehow far away from where Jesus was, and that Jesus couldn't hear him. Rather, Jesus was close enough to hear what Peter said, and how much more the pain Jesus must have felt to have heard Peter's denials. Scripture says Jesus turned and looked at Peter. But we can say looking at Peter was not a look of accusation, for accusation would have only deepened the hardness of heart of Peter. When Jesus turned and looked at Peter, it was the look of forgiveness, a look filled with love. But it was a look that also reminded Peter of his boasting, that he was willing to die for Jesus. But now he realizes how empty his words were and how much pain he caused, so he wept bitterly. Jesus had already forgiven Peter, but in the gospel today, Peter is reconciled with Jesus. Peter also has to accept his weakness that led him to deny Jesus. He has to challenge himself not to do that again. Now that Peter has been reconciled, he can now take on the role of feeding Jesus' sheep. That means caring for his people, teaching them, caring for them the way Jesus cares for them. Notice that it is Jesus who takes the initiative to reconciliation with Peter. Here, Jesus asks Peter 3 times. We can say it was a way of Peter saying he was sorry for denying Jesus each time by responding that he loved him. And each time that Peter affirms his love for Jesus, Jesus then gives him a mission: feed my sheep. This should remind us that Jesus does not hold sin against us, but rather seeks a way that the sinner might return to him in love, forgiveness, and reconciliation. I think the example of Peter, from a fisherman to a disciple who boasted his faithfulness to follow Jesus, who became the one who would deny Jesus, the one who had been made the rock of the church, and a confident believer in Jesus, willing to die for Jesus. This is the story of every Christian. We are called to follow Jesus, even when we fail, like Peter did. Jesus comes, the Good Shepherd, to bring us back to his flock, back to a new relationship with him. And like Peter, we are called to listen to the word of Jesus. When we have disappointments, like Peter in catching nothing in the net after fishing all night, to turn to Jesus and follow his instruction, and so have a bountiful result in our catch, our work, our witness. And like Peter, Jesus counts on us to be a rock of faith, someone solid he can build on, like wheat, not useless chaff, easily blown by the wind this way and that. Peter is the story of all of us, a worker, a follower of Jesus, a fallen sinner, now called again to follow Jesus, to grow in faith, to trust in him. In each of the Easter stories, we can find ourselves. They are images of each of us, like Mary Magdalene, sorrowful at the death of Jesus, like Thomas, doubting and not completely trusting in Jesus, like Peter and his journey of faith from denial to courage, from a fisherman to a follower of Jesus who proclaims the gospel.